Climate change is very much a justice issue, and I think we're realizing that more and more. First of all, the impacts of climate change are felt most by the poorest countries and communities, who are the least responsible for greenhouse gas emissions. They don't drive cars, they don't use central heating, they don't make the problem, but they suffer most from the problem. And part of climate justice is to say they must be prioritized in the solutions that we have. And part of that is to ensure that they will have clean energy, that they will have clean cook stoves, lights in their home. They already probably have a mobile phone, and we need to use even social protection systems to reach about 3 billion people with clean energy as part of moving away from fossil fuels. We're very clear now from a climate justice perspective that we don't have any time to waste in getting to zero carbon emissions, hopefully by 2050. Because then we'll be able to stay below 2 degrees Celsius, maybe down closer to 1.5 degrees. And we needed to do it the climate justice way, a fair way that puts people at the centre. And that's why here in Lima, I'm glad that there is a sense that it's about people. It's about people being informed and being aware. It's about the next generation, intergenerational justice, because we're not using the world's resources in a way that is sustainable, and therefore we are facing our children and grandchildren with potential catastrophe. There are a number of projects now which are really very encouraging. My foundation has done research into the use of climate finance in 5 different countries. And for example, in Guyana, which has done very good work on forestry, it is conserving its forest and it's going to go to zero carbon in the 2020s. But also there's a wonderful project about support for mangrove forestry, where they started because the community asked that they prioritize single mothers with children. And they became leaders of a mangrove forest production, which led to a special craft centre from work from the mangroves, and just a whole hive of activity. And I think we need more of these examples where very often it's women who are leading at local level, because climate affects women and men differently. If you undermine livelihoods and food, it's the woman who has to put food on the table. She has to go further for the firewood or to get water. And therefore, we need women's voices. My foundation is very strong on the need to have gender equality written into the guiding principles of the new agreement in Paris. And we need to build on the language we had in Cancun, that all climate action should respect all human rights. We want to say should respect, protect and fulfill all human rights, because that's where we now are. We're at the stage where climate change is deeply undermining and adversely affecting human rights, and it could get a lot worse, to a degree that would be catastrophic. And that's serious. I think it's a very good question, because we need this wider influence. In many ways, the COPs, and this is COP20 here in Lima, the COPs have been negotiators from a mainly scientific and environmental background. They need to realize this is about people, it's about politics, it's about business, it's about development. And the climate summit was a great help. And the march in New York and all the events around the world reminded people that we need action on climate. People want it, and we need it in a way that is very people-centered. This is about development and politics and the future of humanity. I am glad that the French president said recently that he hopes in Paris it will be about human rights and a new human right for the whole of humanity, because we will have an agreement that will stay below 2 degrees Celsius, 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and all the decisions that come from that. And we're not relying only on the negotiators. We want these alliances between business on the carbon pricing, on climate smart agriculture, on cities doing much more, on civil society really being part of wider partnerships for change. So that's in a way why we have to frame it with strong language on gender equality and human rights, because that centres us then on people and the impact on people and the advantage when we get to the zero carbon world of better health, better clean energy, jobs, innovation. The new climate economy report that coincided with the climate summit made it clear that it's in every country's interest to go as clean as possible, as quickly as possible, on the right track of no carbon emissions. In a way, I think we need to talk more about the solutions. One of the things that was very noteworthy at the climate summit was the commitment of some of the smaller countries to go carbon neutral, because they know it's in their interests and they've worked out how they're going to get there. Costa Rica, Ethiopia, many of the small island states, because they're desperate, they will go under unless we can go to carbon neutrality. And for them it's a matter of life and death and sovereignty and identity of their people. I have a friend, Ursula Rakova, who's moving her small population from one of the Cataract Islands. She's moving them to Papua New Guinea, where they've negotiated for land and they've negotiated relationships between the 1,500 who will come and be living in a new place. But she says very sadly, there is nothing I can do about the fact that they have to move from the land of the bones of their ancestors. They're indigenous people. You can imagine how hard that is. If we're not careful, and Nick Stern was talking about this the other day, there will be billions of people, literally, who will have to move from where they are through flooding, desertification. This is not something that we can, be casual about. There is no plan B, as the Secretary General said, and therefore Lima is so important in preparation for Paris. We have to get a text here in Lima, and hopefully good human rights and gender language in that text, and we have to get clarity on the intended nationally determined contributions that every country will make. And I would like to see more urgency at this stage. We still have some days to go. There is momentum, but somehow a lack of urgency. And I really feel it's important that we recognize that we're the last generation to be able to do something about climate change. The first generation to understand how serious it is, and the last generation that can do something about it. So as a grandmother with 5 small grandchildren, I feel this terrible sense of urgency that has to be an urgency that gets us to a very good agreement in Paris next year, and that won't be enough. We have to ratchet up the ambition for the richer countries to decarbonize deeply and rapidly, but also to support the emerging economies that need energy to have clean energy.